Hello everyone, it's Jamal Thomas. Welcome to the Progressive Soapbox. I am seeing green all around, so I am assuming I am a go. Let me check my audio. I always check that before I start, because I'm paranoid about it. The moments that I don't check it is the moments where it acts up. Alright, good. Everything's good. Guys, I want to start off thanking people who gave Super Cash and one of the other ones. My wife kind of pointed out that I missed, I guess, a few of the people who gave, so thank you very much. I've changed my setup a little bit so I can see when people are commenting, or at the very least I should be able to see when people give cash or Super Cash. I had two of these that I really want to do, and I don't think I'm gonna have time to do both, so I am just going to do this one. This is us. Let's see. Damn, what did I do with that one? Yeah, I've changed my setup and screwed myself up. There we are. This is us. This picture is called Earthrise. I had this picture on my wall in one of my old apartments because I love this picture. I thought this picture was amazing, and it looks like it's just sitting in the blackness, or like it's sitting on some kind of black fabric or something. This kind of glass planet, this perfectly blue planet. That planet has all of the resources that everybody on that planet would need to secure themselves. Meaning there's no reason that anybody on that planet should be hungry. There's no reason anyone on that planet should be without a house. There's no reason why anybody on that planet should not have the basics that they need to persist themselves with a happy life. But of course, we know that that's not the case. From this perspective, that is a beautiful blue marble. The closer that we get, however, the horrors, the things that these apes have done to one another, become more clear and apparent. I'm bringing this up because we only have one of those. Like, we don't have multiple planets. We have a finite planet. That planet is large, but it is a finite planet. The third rock from the sun. It is all we have access to. It is all we have. And in being all that we have, shouldn't we take care of it? I've made this point before, and it sounds immensely stupid when I say it. But I say it because it's not something that we necessarily follow and live by, which kind of gets across the stupidity of the way that we organize ourselves. There are real things and there are unreal things. That planet is a real thing. The finite resources on that planet is a real thing. That's a real limit. Us, human beings, are real things. You can make a point that says everything in physical matter reality is a real thing, meaning if I can put my hands on it, I can put my hands on this desk, I can put my hands on this wall, those are real things. Money is not. Money is not. The conceptions that we come up with, like government and status and culture, those are not. Those are human conceptions. Those are figments of our imagination. States are essentially legal fictions. Companies, corporations are legal fictions. Cash is made out of thin air. None of this stuff is real. Human beings are. Human beings suffer. They get cold. They get lonely. They get hot. They need love. They want to give love. They want to cooperate. Sometimes they want to be asshole and dicks. We're people. We're real things. Now, I emphasize that because we are inextricably linked to the world to which we were born and evolved. We only have one planet. We are not an interstellar species. If anything happens to this world, anything happens to our habitable environment, to the degree that it happens in an exact same proportion that damage takes place, we will also suffer. We will also suffer. When I was younger, when I was 17, sorry, I'm bad at doing two things at once. When I was 17, or even 16, 17, I had these spells of nausea and vomiting. It would happen for maybe 3 months and go away. Happen for 3 months, go away. And it got to the point where it became persistent. I would be at a chess tournament playing chess. beating the hell out of my opponent, but getting up every 15-30 minutes to go to the bathroom to throw up. What we eventually found out was that my kidneys were damaged. That starting since I was 12 years old, there was persistent kidney damage that got worse and worse and worse year after year after year, getting to the point of culminating to the point where the kidneys could not necessarily sufficiently keep the entity alive, meaning me. Meaning the body was essentially going through these purging phases of trying to get the toxins out of the body itself. And over the course of a period of time, the window of the nausea got worse and worse and more frequent and more frequent. The body itself, once it hit 10% of functionality, could no longer persist. Meaning there had to be some kind of medical intervention in order to save the life. Earth, whether you want to go with this Gaia hypothesis or anything else, I don't necessarily know if I go with that. But it is a living ecosystem, and that is an ecosystem to which we depend on. And at a certain point, if anything happens, adversely happens to that ecosystem, we will suffer and we will also perish, particularly from the standpoint of a civilization. This came out either today or yesterday. Most serious effects of human activities on Earth are getting worse. Study. This came out January 4th. The volume of ocean water completely devoid of oxygen has almost quadrupled over the last 50 years, a new scientific study has revealed. Think about that. It quadrupled in 50 years, the amount of water, the volume of water that is literally, it's dead zones, devoid of oxygen. Scientists from Go-to-Known, I don't know what that is, Global Ocean Oxygen Network, a United Nations working group, said the ocean has lost around 2% of its dissolved oxygen, an element vital to the survival of marine life, oceanic diversity, and natural geochemical cycling. The team was set up specifically to investigate the impact of de-oxygenation, and resultant study, which was published in the journal Science, is considered the most comprehensive analysis of ocean oxygen depletion. The main cause of the oxygen depletion outlined in the study are pollution and climate change, with humans playing the biggest role in the drop. Oxygen is fundamental to life in oceans, said lead author of the study, Dr. Denise Breitberg, a marine ecologist with the Smithsonian Environmental Research Center. The decline in oxygen and ocean oxygen ranks among the most serious effects of human activities on Earth's environment. As a result of climate change, warming of the ocean surface has made it harder for oxygen to penetrate the deep ocean, while general warming makes it difficult to keep the oxygen held inside. The team found the drop in oxygen has also led to a rise in dead zones, oceanic areas incapable of supporting any marine life. Coastal regions in particular have seen a tenfold increase in these zones. There have even been reports of 100-mile stretches in which no life is found. Understand what is being said here. These guys are looking at the environment that we live in, and they're looking at the things that we ourselves are doing on this environment, on this planet. Things that we ourselves consider normal and natural, and just the way in which we live. And it's destroying the planet. And in this case, destroying life in our ecosystem, in our oceans. It's amazing. Pollution of the ocean from sewage and fertilizer overflow, which stimulates the growth of algae, a process known as nutrient loading, has been cited as one of the reasons for the coastal depletion. Combined effects of nutrient loading and climate change are greatly increasing the number and size of the dead zones in open ocean and coastal waters, where oxygen is too low to support most marine life, said Vladimir Urbanin, Executive Secretary of the International Oceanographic Commission that formed GOTNE. Experts have warned that the collateral damage of unhealthy ecosystems in the ocean can be far-reaching and extensive. It is a tremendous loss to all support services that rely on recreation and tourism, hotels, restaurants, taxi drivers, and everything else, said Dr. Lisa Levine, a biological oceanographer at Scripps Institution of Oceanography, and one of the ocean study's co-authors. Unlike most climate change disasters, the change in nutrient-driven ocean oxygen decline can be solved with local actions like improved sewage systems. essentially, we're putting stuff into the water that is destroying life in that water and creating oxygen dead zones. That's us. Nutrient runoff and climate change. Carbon that we put in the atmosphere. Let's keep going. This is going to be morbid, but necessary. So, Earth on track for hottest year ever as warming speeds up. Now, one of the studies that they did, they were using satellite imagery in order to determine how their calculations were, meaning that what they postulated in regards to climate change and how things were actually in a more accurate way, how they could view that stuff. And the satellite imagery gave across this idea that it was on the worst end of the scale, meaning what we postulated that this was going to be based on what we know, the factors that we know that's drivers of this, was at the far end of the worst case scenario. And mind you, all of this is speculation of itself, meaning it could be worse. I've seen cases where people are talking about the jet stream shutting down. I've seen cases where people are talking about a warming trend that goes exponential, not just this kind of one item after the next. They don't know for certain how bad this is going to be. And the last thing we need to do is pushing the edges of it to saying, well, scientists said we can go 2 degrees, so fuck it, let's just go 2 degrees. Wouldn't necessarily push that. Let's keep going. There's more. Sperm counts in the West plunged by 60% in 40 years as modern life damages men's health. Pesticide, hormone disruption, chemicals, diet, stress, smoking, and obesity have all been suggested as possible reasons behind the dramatic declines, but experts say more research is urgently needed. Regardless of whether they say more research is needed, they're attributing it to human behavior. Meaning, again, what we're doing is not just destroying life in the oceans and creating dead zones. It is killing us. It is killing us. 60% sperm count in the West plunges by 60% in 40 years. There's more. It gets worse. Earth has lost half of its wildlife in the past 40 years. Species across land, rivers, and seas decimated as humans kill for food in unsustainable numbers and destroy habitats. When I say there is a such thing as real things and unreal things, and I say that we need to prize and pay more attention to real things, not these mental figments of our imaginations like hash, this is kind of what I mean. We are killing ourselves and we're killing our habitable environment, the only habitable environment that we have access to. This is a functional level of insanity. These are not rational human beings that do this, meaning us. When you hear Bill Maher making this argument about Islam, bashing Islam, saying how crazy and batshit crazy and how religious they are, and yet he exists in a capitalistic system that believes it's perfectly okay to take resources in unsustainable ways and use those resources just to create jobs with people being on hamster wheels, exploiting the resources of the planet and exploiting the people of the planet in unsustainable ways that's destroying us and the globe in a cataclysmic way. Who's a religious person? I mean, he's living this way. He thinks this way is fucking awesome. At the exact same token, bashing Islam is a religious belief. Your capitalism is also a religious belief. If you honestly believe that you can keep up this unsustainable path, meaning ignoring the fact that there are real things, ignoring the fact that you are a ball in the goddamn cosmos on a finite planet that has a particular ecosystem that needs to be in a particular balance for you as a human beings to persist, the planet will be there. The planet would always be there. You might not. And always is too strong. At some point, the planet is going to burn up in the sun when it expands and it starts breaking down elements from carbon to iron. I think it gets to iron, it stops. But nevertheless, the planet will be eaten up at some point by the sun expanding all the way out to the astronomical units. But that's kind of besides the point. That's missing my point. I'm just getting to this thing of the planet itself in the normal circumstances will be here. We won't. We won't. There's more. The great nutrient collapse. The atmosphere is literally changing the food we eat for the worse, and almost nobody is paying attention. I will summarize this because I've summarized this before, and people gave me shit acting like I was crazy for bringing this up. I was like, Yeah, man, I've never seen that. Well, you've never seen a lot of stuff. Ultimately, what the study boils down to is they didn't understand why the nutrient density in our foods was getting worse. Why is nutrient density getting worse? What they found was carbon that we're pumping into the atmosphere. Plants, trees eat carbon. They use that carbon in the same way that we use food. The problem with that is it's like junk food. You've supplied so much carbon to these plants that it's almost like you're squishing the nutrient density out of the foods, meaning the foods become somewhat like junk food. They become less and less nutritionally dense over the course of the several years. So the density of the foods becomes essentially less healthy. Human behavior is based on the things that we ourselves are doing. We call this a natural lifestyle. We call this a normal lifestyle. But ultimately, the capitalistic system, the game space that's been created and generated, that's used to allow people to make massive amounts of profit at the expense of everyone else, is destroying the planet. Going all the way down to the point of destroying the food that we eat and that we need to live off. Sperm count decimated. The number of animals on the planet decimated, meaning ecosystems decimated. Dead zones in the water. The planet being on record for the highest temperature yet, meaning 1 year after the next ended up being the highest temperature on record, I think with the exception of like 1 year. And there's more. This is distributional resources around the planet. 71% of the world population lives on less than $10 a day. You have a situation where, 6 people or something like that owns like half of the world's resources, or half of the world's wealth. There's some number, I don't remember the exact number. But when you drill down into it and you say, okay, who has what? You get this chart. In 2011, 15% of the planet was under poor. Now, poor means living off of $2 a day. I did this math just in case anybody wanted to know. There's 7 billion people on the planet. 1 billion lives off of $2 a day. That's less than what you pay for a cup of coffee. What does that look like? Honestly, what does that look like? What are the conditions of a human being when you have the technical know-how to be able to produce all the goods that everyone needs on the planet? You have the technical know-how and the resources to make sure that each and every person is fed and clothed, have somewhere to stay, have something to eat. You have those things. You don't use those things for the betterment of the planet. You use those things purely to make profit for a very minor or small percent of the globe. Is a finite planet. If you're going to give somebody $40 billion, then somebody else is by definition going to be living on the street. In this particular case, you have 8 billion people living off of $2 a day. What does your world look like when you have that much poverty, that much rampant poverty in your globe that is fundamentally a choice? 56% are low income. Low income by this measure is $10 a day, between $2 and $10 a day. So let's say $6 a day. Let's do the math. You have 7 billion people on the planet. 56%, meaning what? Over 350 billion. Over 3.5 billion. More than that. Live off $2 to $10 a day. Who's getting the spoils of destroying this world in the way that this world is being destroyed? You understand that as the climate destabilizes, the weather, storms, and everything else is going to get worse, meaning countries like Puerto Rico, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Cuba, the poorest of the countries are going to be decimated. Do you believe that those countries has an animal agriculture or an oil and gas industry, the drivers of the climate change thing? The industrialized nations, for the most part, have been able to profit off of this stuff, while at the same token, the poorer nations being decimated by the behaviors of the richer nations. You have a situation where half of the globe is living off of $2 to $10 a day, while a very small percent is reaping the benefits of the resources on the planet. I've asked this question before. I asked this question again. Who was around to give those resources to anybody? This world should be common heritage. The only way resources were taken on this planet, they were taken either by blood and steel, meaning they were stolen and people were murdered in order to get them. If that is true, the moment that those things were stolen, the moment that those things were, well, those people were killed, laws were put into place to stabilize the advantages, to say, all right, this is the game space now. We've instantiated the game space. We've stolen what we had to steal, and now we need to have civil society. The colonized societies, meaning in Africa and some of those other places where they institute rule of law, instantiating the gains that the people, the colonizers in those countries, meaning you have a subset of the population that's poor, not because of anything that they did, but purely because of the way that that land was stolen, taken, and the resources were essentially harvested, or the resources were processed. At that point, they can say, well, look, this is a rule of law. This is a rule of law. But mind you, in order to get to the point of the rule of law, you did some really nasty and disgusting things. You have the situation where the overwhelming majority of the globe is in poverty. Desperate, dirt, poor, poverty. Not even having a bathroom in the house. Poverty. And all of this poverty, just to make sure that 7% of the entire globe lives like kings. You understand, we are literally destroying the planet. Nutrient collapse in our foods. Half of the wildlife, 50% of the wildlife on Earth, gone, extinct. 60% of sperm counts in 40 years plummets. The hottest year on record, 1 year after the next. And water losing oxygen, with dead zones spreading all over the place. Some of the cases being even 100 miles of a dead zone. Another one you could add to this is plastic. We have tons, metric tons of plastics in our oceans. And if I'm not mistaken, it's like by 2030 or 2050, there'll be more plastic in our oceans than fish. Those apes. Those apes. It does not have to be this way. Did not have to be this way at all. And ultimately, we're destroying our own habitable environment for a capitalistic system in order to funnel profits to the very top. If you're going to destroy your planet, do you really want to destroy it for a bunch of fat plutocrats? And why do you accept this as a real, legitimate system if the end result of that system is the destruction of your habitable world purely for the sake of a few fat plutocrats? So, I make the point that this is a big fucking deal. And it is a certain level of insanity to organize yourself in a way where you're literally destroying your world. You're not destroying it for anything real. Understand what I mean? Human beings are real. You have billions of them that are suffering, hungry, inclement weather, exposed to the elements, having kids that are dying of starvation, having kids that are suffering, a parent having to watch his kids suffer, not for any fault of their own, but purely because of the economic model that we've organized ourselves with. This world could be a different place. There is no God above that is forcing your world to be this way. And the fact is, allowing your planet to be destroyed is the height of irrationality. You need to explain to me how capitalism is not a religious belief, when people just kind of cling to this idea that this is the way that things are supposed to be, when all the evidence to the contrary is that you are destroying your fucking planet, and you only have one. You only have one. So, I'm not going to beat a dead horse. I do these stories from time to time because I try to get across this point of, oh my God, this is an emergency, and what the fuck are we doing? And if we're going to destroy ourselves, Can we at least destroy ourselves in a way where the resources are equitably distributed? They've convinced me. You know, I would imagine during slavery, the slave owners were probably upset that their property was taken away, completely ignorant of the fact, or not even caring of the fact, that their property were human beings, that the human beings themselves were more vitally important than the property that those people had access to. I would make the point that this is the same. Ultimately, the access that people need to have goods and services, their needs are more important than the unreal imaginary cash that those people have in their pockets. And at some point, society around the globe is going to have to come up and say, yes, you having a bunch of cash is not a real thing. Ultimately, the needs of those people are. And we're not going to organize our society in a way that allows massive amounts of cash to funnel to the top at the expense of everybody else. And by everybody else, I mean the entire planet. It needs to change. I don't know the point where people say, we're being exploited, the resources on this planet should belong to all of us, and in no way should we be funneling those resources to a very select group of individuals. That needs to stop. So, I will leave it at that. We have a few people here this late. I don't know why we have people here this late. Let's see. It's too late, Jamal. Entropy ride it till the wheels come off. I don't think it's too late. Noble Brown, we weren't organized in the humane way because cash rules, dollar bill. Y'all, it's all unfair. It's all fair. Yeah, fair is not what I'd call it. Fair is not what I call it, Noble Brown. Fiat currency. Yeah, I know. Yeah, the fiat currency thing makes it that much more ridiculous. You have guys who push this MMT thing, and oftentimes when I'm talking to them, my only thought becomes, how can you say MMT and not realize that the money is not real? I mean, the whole point of the idea of fiat currency is that they're making shit out of thin air. It's not backed by anything, and even if it was backed by gold, so what? Gold, in and of itself, is just kind of this arbitrary thing to hold value. But that's not even there. It's fiat. They make the shit out of thin air. And yet, even make it out of thin air, we still don't provide those resources to people that need it. The United States would give a bunch of money to countries in order to contain and control those countries. We would spend $80 billion on military that doesn't necessarily need it. Create the money out of thin air. And we would allow people to accrue massive amounts of wealth. Jeff Bezos, the guy who owns Amazon, the company that my wife, I'm sure, has put half of the money that he has in his pocket by buying the shit on Amazon. He has more money than some countries. Put that in perspective. He has more money than some countries. Jeff Bezos, how much poverty could Jeff Bezos, if you extracted half of that wealth from Jeff Bezos, there is nothing that Jeff Bezos or any other human being has done to warrant that much of a difference in cash between him and everybody else. And yet, the society in the game space says that it's perfectly fair for that to take place. It is not fair. It is morally wrong and reprehensible for this guy to have that much cash for people living on the street. I've just did these stories where people were living on the street. San Francisco, SPCA had fucking robots to remove human beings who were sleeping on the street. Me, in Richmond, during a snowstorm, a blizzard, ice is on the ground, and you have people sleeping on the street with blankets and signs begging for money, having their hands or the signs propped up under their chins because they didn't want to put their fingers out because it was too cold. And this fucking guy has billions of dollars. This society is fucked up. Beyond fucked up. You have this much damage that's taking place on the planet, and you have these people calling other people religious maniacs or calling our society rational and all this other stuff. We're fucking killing ourselves. It is impossible to call yourself rational if you're willing to do something that's going to destroy your world. That's my point. If you tax the 1% at 80%, shit, 90%. Noble Brown, 90%. If you tax the 1% at 80% of all their wealth, they would not even know it's gone. No, they wouldn't. That's how much money, I mean, that number is mind-blowing. Like, and you're right. that money should be taxed, and that money should be given and distributed to the people who need it all across the world. Period. Period. They're not going to fucking miss it. I mean, at a certain point, it just becomes a decimal in the bank. And none of it is real. This is kind of my point. None of this stuff is real. Human beings are real. The idea that somebody would make an argument that, yes, it is perfectly okay, it is just, it is morally just to pretend as if this game space is somehow an actual reality, and that it's okay for that person to starve, go hungry, go without health care, for this other guy to have billions of dollars. It's fucking insane. Noble Brown, entropy rules, kiss it goodbye. Well, whether we kissing it goodbye or not, you're still forced to push in a direction against the grain on this. You don't have a choice. Your only option is to, like you said, kiss it goodbye. Take your joint, take your bong kit or whatever else, and what do you say? Bend over and kiss your ass goodbye. Ultimately, though, you still push and you still bitch and you still moan and you try to push in a direction that's decent and that's relevant. Whether or not you can win or not is kind of besides the point. You don't necessarily have I guess you do have a choice, but on the off chance that you could save yourself, on the off chance that you can save the next civilization, hell, on the off chance that you could, even if the planet goes through this kind of change, if the off chance you could somehow stem the tide of that particular change, you have to do it. Even if you believe you're going to fail, you got to do it. So, hundreds of millions of people who depend on the sea de-oxygenated would affect them. Yeah. You have people who live off the ocean. Agreed. Fletcher Daniels. Monkey killing monkey over pieces on the ground. Silly monkeys give them thumbs. They forge a blade. And where there's one, there's bound to divide it right into two. Right in the two. What? Oh, two, the band, the music. Okay, fair enough. The make-believe of it all is the bitter truth I hate the most. It's all made up. Yeah, it is. Clyde illusion. The coastal dead zones result from fertilizer and sewage runoff, the land and into the seas. You have to still try. Fletcher Daniels, yeah, you still have to try. And you know the wild part about that is a lot of the stuff is not necessary. When Roundup made its, it's like we're trying to save, or we're trying to feed 9 billion people. Roundup doesn't give two shits about feeding 9 billion people. Roundup just wants you to buy their shitty product, and then information comes out saying that product may cause cancer, or may be killing bees just because of the biology of the bees itself and the way that the product interacts with the bees. I mean, we're killing ourselves. There's simpler ways to do things. But because we want to generate profit and we want to create this unreal thing, we allow this stuff to persist. It's fucking amazing. Profit is a killer. Capitalism is a killer. When you hear people saying, oh, well, that's not really capital. No, this is capitalism. This is capitalism. Ultimately, you're talking about a system of exchange where people are trying to maximize their profits. And as they maximize their profits, once you put that software into the system itself, you can't expect that software to end at the edge of the economy. I mean, if you're still trying to maximize your profit, it makes perfect sense that you're going to dig your fingers into the political apparatus. It makes perfect sense that human beings in politics are still susceptible to ideas of status because those people are actually human beings. Integrity doesn't play a part in the process. If you tell people in the game space that status is part of that game space, or that maximizing your profit is part of the game space, whether that's maximizing it in your job or maximizing it in your financial matters, sustainability is not prized or part of the process. And even now, we manufacture, we get these chemicals, or we get these we mine products like gold and iron and all this other stuff, and we put these things in our devices, and we build these devices to fail, full well understanding that if those devices don't fail, if we built a laptop that lasted for 10 years, that laptop manufacturer will go out of business. That is a defect in the way that you've organized your society and your community, that you have a world of finite resources, and yet you find it necessary to throw those resources away because of something that's unreal, like profit. The resources that you're extracting from the grounds are real. The resources that you're throwing away are real. The money is not. You're destroying your planet for something that's not real. That's my point. Clad illusion. Mass proliferation of surfing through the 80s, and when surfers have deemed it valuable to expend fossil fuels and flying around the planes, chasing waves on boards and using equipments from oil. Not just that, everything that you use up to this point has some kind of oil in it. Whether you want to talk about the bag that your cereal is in, whether you want to talk about, well, of course, your cars. I mean, oil is in all sorts of products. But it gets worse. You have this thing of globalism. I know right-wingers talk about this a lot, but they're not fully wrong on this. You have, let's say Florida grows oranges. But you make a deal with Mexico, or let's say California, or let's say China, that you're going to ship oranges from China to Florida. Now, even though Florida has the capacity to grow oranges, it's cheaper because you don't necessarily take the environmental cost of transporting them from point A to point B, meaning the environmental hazard, the amount of waste that you're expending, the amount of oil that you're expending, the stuff that you're pumping into the atmosphere, the carbon that you're pumping into the atmosphere, that doesn't come into play. It all gets boiled down to a monetary figure. The monetary figure doesn't necessarily take an environmental impact, meaning the real world that's being killed and destroyed by the behavior doesn't get factored into the equation. Because ultimately you have a subsystem of capitalism that completely ignores the fact that you have a wider, actual, real system, meaning your natural, habitable environment. They would ship those oranges or those things from one country to the next, even though that country may be perfectly capable of growing that particular product. In some cases, destroying the capacity, like if I'm not mistaken, in Haiti, destroying their rice capacity, meaning Haiti had the capacity to create rice. They started dropping a bunch of rice in the country that was cheaper than the farmers themselves could build in Haiti, meaning they destroyed the economic ability for them to build or create rice. Not to mention people were getting sick and everything else from the rice that they were dropping in on them. Look, I don't mean to keep this one long. All I'm saying is we're offing ourselves. And this is a big fucking deal. And the capitalistic system in no way takes this into account, into its calculus. It's purely this issue of profit and purely this issue of putting off the environmental costs and hazards off onto the rest of the society. The societal impact of these guys being able to make massive amounts of cash and being able to exploit labor to the degree that they're exploiting labor is the destruction of the goddamn planet. Now, if you're bitching about a wealth tax, don't bitch to me about a wealth tax. If you're bitching about taxes in order to try to drain away some of the funds from these guys in order to put these things into worthy causes like green energy, or put these things into other people's pockets who actually need it, don't bitch to me about it. Money isn't real, those people are. It's massively moral. So I'm going to leave it at that. Skeptics 77. Florida has better oranges. Yeah, I'm not using it as an exact. I'm just making a point in a way that we ship stuff from point A to point B, completely ignoring the fact that there's a real world. Like, we act as if the world is just this thing that just stands in reserve waiting for us to exploit the resources. We believe in science for all sorts of stuff. Meaning we trusted to build our cars, we trusted to explain our world, we trusted to explain health, they even tell us our climate, our temperature, we trusted to put a satellite from where we are all the way through the cosmos to go to goddamn Saturn and beyond. We believe in science and engineering for all of this stuff. That exact same science and engineering that we believe for those things is telling us that we're destroying our world. That's what it boils down to. So, I will leave it at that. We're fucking ourselves over. And we're doing it for something that's not real. And that unreal thing is going into the hands of a very small select group of human beings. And I'm saying, is that really the society and the world that you want? Being destroyed and exploited purely for the benefit of a small 1%. I will leave it at that. Alright guys. If you enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, guys. What do you think of fossil fuels? Fossil fuels are fucking horrible. Yeah, fossil fuels are fucking... And they're unnecessary to a certain degree. And understand what I mean when I say this. We can organize our society in a way that harnesses energy in other ways. The problem for this is cash. Cash is the hedge. You have all the resources you need to do all the things that you need. Meaning you have enough resources to feed, clothe, house everybody on the planet. The hedge, the thing that gets in the way of that process, is cash. You have a planet that's being destroyed, and the thing that gets in the way of that is cash. Think about how rational and ridiculous that is. Your scientists are telling you that your planet is being destroyed, or at the very least your civilization and your habitable environment is being undermined and destroyed. And the arguments that's usually made is we can't afford it. You can't afford to do anything about it. You have cancer. Yeah, man, I can't really afford to go to the doctor. Can't afford to go to the doctor. It's massively rational to the degree of a religious experience. And yet, that is how they go about this stuff. I mean, it's fucking insane. It's fucking insane. We're literally using dead animals to run out and say, yeah, dead animal juice. Yes, noble, yes. Dead animal juice. That's exactly what it is. That's exactly what it is. Yeah. That's exactly what it is. Alright, guys. I am going to end it here. If you guys enjoy the content, feel free to share, like, subscribe, and of course, you can always support through Patreon. Thanks, guys. Dead animal juice. Yeah, I love that one.